Awesome. Thank you so much. And it's all Rob. All Rob. Page alcoholic. All right, let's dive in. We're on page 25, and where we're supposed to be picking up is at the second full paragraph, the great fact. But I didn't do a good job of managing time last week, which I know is a shock to everyone who regularly comes to this study. Me? Poor management of time? I know. It's almost as though I went on a tangent or two. That would never happen. And so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the paragraph above. Because I spoke a little about where the line where it says we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. And I want to talk about that just a little bit. And because I'm so thoughtful, it'll give you time to find page 25, second full paragraph if you're having trouble finding it. Thoughtful. And so when we talk about that fourth dimension of existence, what I want to point out is this is the second time that we have seen that fourth dimension of existence being described in this book. Now, the first time we saw it was in Bill's story, and the first time we saw it, it was catapulted, but now we're being rocketed. So we got some rocket boosters on that bad boy. We've made some spiritual progression. We're going. And just what I want to emphasize is that this is something that happens with velocity. If you imagine a catapult, imagine a rocket. And we're by Heathrow. I'm going to make everything tie in. I don't know how I'm going to fit in the parakeets, but we'll do what we can do. We're by Heathrow. There are jet engines. They are moving with some velocity, which tells me that is how I need to move through these 12 steps. Because what is the fourth dimension of existence? Well, it is a synonym, a word that means the same thing as another word, for the spiritual awakening. And that's what we're talking about. So we've been rocketed into the spiritual awakening. Now, I can't be rocketed if I'm slowly having a leisurely stroll, maybe at the London Zoo, maybe because there's some hills there and I'm a little tired. I gotta move with some velocity. So what is this fourth dimension of existence? It is the spiritual awakening. And the phrase, the fourth dimension of existence, one of the best descriptions. Now, I don't have all my screen share things because I'm on a little tablet. I don't got all my stuff, but Rob's here. No pressure on this one for Rob because it was a stick figure person. But one of the best descriptions of the spiritual awakening I actually got from the author C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis, he wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He was also a religious guy. And when he spoke about the fourth dimension, how he described it is seeing the world at a greater depth. So we're all hanging out on Zoom. Why don't we just say for these purposes, we're looking at each other in 2D. Well, unfortunately for Chloe, I'm 3D.
40, I can smell.
Yeah, 40, the smell. I had a shower today, it was fine. But we are in the same room, 3D. So the fourth dimension is seeing the world at a greater depth. And that's what we're talking about. Now, if you're like, girl, that doesn't make any more sense than what you're talking about. What are you talking about? When you come to the meetings and you hear those people who are super annoying, and you might be like, yes, she's talking right now. They're super annoying. They're super happy. They're super full of joy. And they talk about seeing the presence of a power. They talk about these moments of connectedness. And it's like, oh, that's so uncool. Seeing the depth of presence that's available in the world. And if you're like, I still don't get it, well, the next paragraph, the great fact, is going to be another definition of the fourth dimension. Or another way to say it is it is sneaky, because y'all know I love my sneakies, my sneaky prayers, my sneaky promises, and my sneaky descriptions of a spiritual awakening. And that's what we're going to see. So this next paragraph is describing what it is like to live in the fourth dimension, what it is like to live in an awakened state. And it kicks off with the great fact. The great fact, not mediocre wish, not happenstance could be, but the great fact that this is a great fact, not theory, not wish, not could be. It's this, and it says is just this and nothing less. Again, I just want to emphasize that we're not using wishy-washy language. This is available to each and every one of us here today. The great fact is just this and nothing less. And it says that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences. Now that when this book was written, the we was referencing the first 180 member. Yeah. Careful, Brian. All hands on the wheel. Or you do you. You drive how you want. I'm not driving the bus, but God is. It's actually like a truck, not a bus. But anywho, focus. How could she not do well with time? That's shocking. All right. So the we was in reference to the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous. But here's my experience. The book is a book of mirrors. And as we talk about the illness that is alcoholism, I hold that book up to my own experience and this book up to my own experience. And I see myself in this book. I see the symptoms of myself. I see who I am. And when I see that, I see myself in this thing. But this is also a book of mirrors up until this point. I can hold my experience up to this light. If this is my experience, we're talking about me, which is to say, that when it says we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences, originally when it was written, it was the first 180 members. But today, it is all of us who have had the spiritual awakening, or these spiritual awakenings, as the result of the work that is outlined in this book. That's what we're talking about. And so it goes on to say, when it says deep and effective. So this isn't a surface level thing. This isn't like, oh, I'm happy to be here. Happy to be sober. Oh, goodness gracious, aren't these knuckles white? No, it is deep. And it is effective, and I needed something that was effective because what I was trying to put between me and that first drink was not effective. It did not work. And so what is promised to each and every one of us is an experience that can and will be deep and can and will be effective. What is rude is that I got to take some action to get there. And so this is not a theory. This is not a belief. This is lived experience. And that's why I'm able to say it's available to all of us, because it is the lived experience of the first 180 members. And it is the lived experience of all of those who identify as recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so this is where, as we're getting into having a look at what does the spiritual awakening look like. So we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have revolutionized our whole attitude. So what is happening is there is a revolutionary change happening within myself, with my attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. So there's a revolutionary change in the way that I show up to life. And let me give you a practical lived example from my own life. On my own power, I don't want to be here anymore. And it's not because of the weather. On my own, I mean living. I'm not talking about London. It's been lovely. West London. Gotta be specific. Sorry. Near Heathrow, South Hall, but also near this other place. I don't know. I hear we're somewhere fancy. Sorry, focus. Yeah, the council estates. It's so fancy. All right. But what we're talking about is what my whole life was before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Drunk or sober, life was too much. I couldn't do it. I couldn't fit and be okay in my own skin. I was overwhelmed. I was full of fear. I hated myself. I hated existence, and nothing was ever enough. And that revolutionary change in how I show up to life is, hey, this isn't so bad. Hey, there's these moments of joy and peace and presence and a desire to focus on what I can give. That is a revolutionary change in how, at least for me, I show up to life. And this revolutionary changed attitude toward our fellows. You know how people will sometimes get like coffee mugs or t-shirts with expressions like, oh, it's like, I'm not a people person until I've had my coffee or whatever. Like that ability to show up with a love that is not my love for people that I don't know. A care that is not my care. A tolerance isn't even the right word. But to show up and genuinely care about other people. Now, if you're new, that might be like, I don't want that. Gross. No, thank you. But I promise that it is in the giving that I receive in abundance. You see, on my own power, I show up to life and I'm trying to get your value and worth and love and attention and affection and esteem and approval. And I might even get it for a moment, but it's not enough. You know that idea of instant gratification. If instant gratification was so good, why does it only last an instant? And I'll sell my soul for booze, but I'll sell it slowly for your attention, for your validation, for your approval, for your love. And it's never enough. Now, when the posture of my heart is attuned to man, that's what I'm getting from God, higher power, creator, the spirit of the universe. And I'm focusing on what I can give to you, to help to you, to support, focusing on that. Man, that's when at least I receive in abundance. There's more than enough. When we talk about this whole revolutionary changed attitude towards God's universe, man, and like, this is how I'll tie in the stupid parakeets. I am somebody that like on my own power, I'd be like, they're loud and annoying. And that's clearly an invasive species. That's not wrong. But that moment of joy and awe and wonder and seeing the presence of God in a silly little parakeet. And you might be like, girl, there's not God in a parakeet. And of course there is. Or sometimes when we talk about spiritual experiences and it's like, I've not had a burning bush moment, and I won't say I've had a burning bush moment, but man, there is something incredible when you can see the presence of a power beyond ourselves in a tree. Like we're seeing the world at a deeper level, and it's available to all of us. And so it goes on to say the central fact of our lives today, not an over there idea, not a belief, not an opinion, not a theory, not what maybe a grandparent believed. No, my lived experience, the central fact, the main fact, not theory, not wish, not could be. The central fact, the great fact, these are not theories. So the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. And that is one of those lines that I can hold my lived experience up to. Is that my experience today? Is the central fact of my life today the absolute certainty that there is a power that has entered into my heart and into my life in a way which is indeed miraculous? Is that my experience? And and here's the thing, I'm not shaming anyone. I have off days. And you might be like, no, that's not my lived experience. And that is okay. That just tells us what we need to do, the action we need to take to get there. And so there's not this wishy-washy language of maybe there's a power greater than ourselves. Maybe that there's a Santa Claus God that's sitting on a cloud and judging us. No, it's saying our lived experience as the result of the course of action is that I have a deep and effective experience of this power. Now, I want to point something out, is that there are two ways to read this. So the central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. But the other way to read it is that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives, as in lives within our heart, in a way which is indeed miraculous. And so either way, one of the places in which this power can be found is within our own heart, which is probably why I've got to do this looking within, starting with inventory. Oh man, it behooves me. That's not the hoodie I'm wearing today. I'm wearing Throckmorton. Looking within to clear away the stuff inside of me that's blocking me from this power. And it goes on to say, he has commenced, which is to say begun. To commence is to begin. It is not finished. There's no glass ceiling. And I know that you guys don't relate to this at all. But when you're at the bar or the pub, where you watch the football, not the soccer. I'm getting it. But when you hit last call, right? Or, when before last call, they discreetly let you know, or not so discreetly, that you will not be served anymore because you are too intoxicated. I know nobody at this meeting relates to that sort of predicament. But that feeling of like, last call, it's done, liquor stores close and no more off sales, well, there isn't that in the spiritual journey. There is no limit. There is no closing time. The spiritual ugly lights are not coming on. You guys know the ugly lights. I know you do. Just me. Okay, that's fine. All right. So it says, he has commenced to accomplish these things for us, which we could never do by ourselves. What could I never do by myself? Well, I'll tell you what my lived experience is. By myself, I could never experience permanent, contented sobriety. Permanent, contented sobriety. That was too much. And that, as a baseline, bare minimum, that is what is offered to us. So it goes on to say, and just bear with me, there's a bit of spiritual undulation, because we see on the bottom of 24, we're going to bounce around a little bit. We see the desperation and then the hopelessness, and we're given the hope. And now we're going to go back to what our predicament is as alcoholics, which is to say, to go from that hopelessness to hope again. So it says, if you are as seriously alcoholic as we were. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I got here, I was like, I hope not. I hope I'm not as seriously alcoholic as you guys are. Like, I'm pretty sure I got a baby, just a little baby version of this alcoholism. And I don't need to do all of this Alcoholics Anonymous stuff that you got to do. I'll just do AA Light, maybe Diet AA Zero, like Coke Zero. Yeah. I don't need that full, what did you call it? The full body? Full fat. I don't need full fat AA. I can do skim AA. I don't know. I hope I'm not as seriously alcoholic as you. And I know you guys at ODAAT would never do this. But when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, this will be a shock. I would do this thing that you guys would never do. It's called sitting at the back of the room and judging people. I know you guys would never. And I would do that. And I'd be like, whoa, these guys, they're alcoholic. Let me tell you, I'm not as bad as they are. And so it says, if you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, gosh, I hope not. We believe there is no middle of the road solution. Now that middle of the road solution is the skim milk, I'm not talking about literal milk, just in case people thought I had a dairy opinion. No opinion on dairy. That's an outside issue. But like the middle of the road solution is the half measures and is I don't want to do all of it. And who would? I mean, I was all here for a middle of the road solution. Yes, please. I'll go to meetings. I love meetings. I gotta sit there. You'll give me free coffee. My stomach could handle coffee then. Occasionally they'll have cookies, biscuits, digestives. I don't know. And I gotta talk about me? Delightful. Just take the meeting hostage, talk about me. Sounds great. I'll be honest, I wasn't talking when I was new. It's like, if there was a pole or a pillar, I was hiding behind it so they wouldn't call on me. And they'd be like, would the person behind the pillar like to share it? I'd be like, no, thank you. So I actually wasn't talking about, I love meetings. And if I could get away with just doing meetings, I would do it. And I'm here for a middle of the road solution. I love me a middle of the road solution. So I'm hoping in this moment, I hope I'm not as bad as you guys, y'all that got to do this whole thing. I hope I just got the diet option, And so it says, We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And man, that is one of those lines where it's like, how did you know? My life was impossible. It was impossible when I was drinking, because I was drinking myself into pain, into consequences, into things that, man, I did not want to be doing, but just as much as it was impossible when I was sober. I put down the bottle and I can't sit and be okay in my own skin. I put down the bottle and the parakeets are just a little too loud. The spiritual parakeets, not the literal ones. We don't have those in Canada. It's so tropical. I was promised a tropical vacation in West London. What's happening? The parakeets. But I couldn't sit and be okay in my own skin. And it says, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. I don't like those options. Those are not good options. Gross. No, thank you. So what do I got to do? I got to find out if that's my situation. If I am an alcoholic, as it's described in this book, I've got to find out, am I in a position where I only have two options? Am I as seriously alcoholic as you are? Am I beyond human aid? And so where do I go to find that? Well, let's pop over to the bottom of page 24 and let's find out if I'm beyond human aid. And you can diagnose yourself, or if you prefer to judge, diagnose me. Spoilers. Yup. All right. So bottom paragraph, page 24, just across the page. It says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up may die or go permanently insane. Oh, okay, so this is what it means to be beyond human aid. So it says, when this sort of thinking, what is the thinking that we're talking about? Well, we dove into it, I guess not last week, the week before, but we dove into it. And the thinking that we are talking about is the obsession of the mind. The thought that I have when I am sober that tells me I can drink again. It looks a little something like nobody will ever know. Just going to go out for 3 drinks. There's no alcoholics in West London. They're not allowed there. They don't exist. It'll be different in West London. I hear the booze is less boozy. I don't know. Trying to make something. I hear it's more posh. We're in a council estate. There's no alcoholics. It's posh there. But it also looks like a case of the Sunleys. I'm out there living my life. I have a drink in my hand and I don't know how it happened. And it also looks like that attrition, the willpower that I have to try to resist that first drink is worn down and I take that drink. So do I have any experiences in my life where I have said, I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink ever again. I don't want to drink tonight. I don't want to do it. And found myself a day, a week, a month, several months down the line, drinking again. And if that is my experience, I have that thinking. Oh no. Oh no. Yeah, not good news. All right, so let's find out. You got that thinking, girl? Let's find out if we got those alcoholic tendencies. So what does it mean to be somebody with alcoholic tendencies? Now, I'm going to do a little bounce. And if you want to bounce around with me, what we're going to do is we're going to pop over to page XXX out of the doctor's opinion. XXX. And I'll do a little bit of stalling so you guys can find it. And it's after the 5 different types of alcoholics. It talks about, the psychopath, the manic depressive, all these different types. But then right after that, it talks about all these and many others have one symptom in common. So this is what it would be to be somebody with alcoholic tendencies, to have this one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. So what does that look like? Well, it talks about this phenomenon, as we've suggested, maybe the manifestation of an allergy. This allergy that once I take a drink, there's something inside of me that sets off and I need more. You see, I take that drink, and that first drink demands a second, and that second drink insists on 4, and that fourth drink will not relent until I've had 8, and that 8th drink is screaming at me until I've had 16. And if you know what it's like for the ugly lights to come on and you're not finding Mr. Right or finding Mr. Right now, you're finding the next drink, trying to get as much as you can. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, that I can't control the amount that I take. And those 2 symptoms, going back to bottom of paragraph of page 24, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, those 2 symptoms are what make me hopeless and make me beyond human power. The allergy of the body means that there will never be a time that I can ever safely drink again, even if there's times when I got away with it. The allergy of the body means I cannot drink, but the obsession of the mind means that I will. And that puts me beyond human aid. So, bottom of page 24, when this sort of thinking, I got that thinking, is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. A little bit of tendencies over here. A little tendinacious. That's not a word. So that's not the word of the day. He actually does stick to real words, which is kind of him. I do appreciate that. And it says he has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. Let's now go to the bottom of page 25. It says we were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid. Anyone else feeling a little called out? Yikes. That's me. That's me. We had but 2 alternatives. And so if I'm somebody that has experience with the obsession of the mind, and I'm somebody that has experience with the allergy of the body, these are the 2 alternatives that I have, the 2 options that I have as an alcoholic. It's kind of a black and white situation at this point. It says 1 was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. And I will be honest, for people like us, that is a tough choice. It is. If you were to hang out in front of a Tesco's and you were to ask people that were going in and out of a Tesco's, hey, what would you like to do? Go on to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of your intolerable situation, which is to say, continue to drink, continue to relapse, continue to try to get sober again and again and again, and destroy the fabric of your existence, break the hearts of those that you love most, destroy your health, your reputation, your goals, your dreams, your life. Or do you want to write some inventory? Maybe do a little 5th step, spend an hour in quiet, ask God to remove the things you found, go make amends for the things you did, keep that prayer meditation going, like do that thing on a regular basis, go help others. You know what they do? They take the option. Now, how often have we sat down with sponsees and been like, all right, let's get into it. It's like, whoa. You want me to do what now? Right? And it is a tough choice. And that's part of why it's important that I understand the nature of alcoholism. Because if I don't have alcoholism, I got choices. I got options. Go to Costco. There's lots of choice. They went to Costco earlier. There's options. There's choices. But if I have alcoholism, I have 2 choices. But the irony of this is that black and white predicament. When I see myself in that black and white situation and I accept that reality, that allows me to then, if I accept that spiritual help, to live a life that is full of wonder and color and joy. But here's the thing. It's black and white. There is no option C. And here's my experience. If I do not choose with everything that is in me to the best of my ability, we're human, we're fallible. Well, you guys are perfect, but I'm human, I'm fallible. I mess up. But if I do not with everything that is in me accept the spiritual help that is on offer, which, to be very clear, is the 12 steps to bring about a spiritual awakening, what that means is that I have chosen an alcoholic death. Whether I think so or not, whether I believe it or not, whether I like it or not, if I have alcoholism, to not choose spiritual help is to choose to go on to the bitter ends, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation. And at this point in our life, that's the only choice I get. Am I willing to choose? Because when it comes to the power of choice in drink, that was taken from me years ago. I do not have the ability to choose whether I will drink or not, which is to say I will drink again. And it's a tough choice. It's a tough choice. And that's why we emphasize in step 1, the hopelessness, because that's what's real. And I won't, listen, I love me some inventory, but I'm not doing it at first unless my life depends on it. And even then, it's a little iffy, you know? And actually, there's a speaker. I think this is a Clancy I story. It might be, it's a Clancy I story. Clancy I spoke about how he would go and he would take meetings doing hospital and institution work, H&I. He would go to the local hospital and carry a meeting to the alcoholics that were on the alcoholic ward. And on the way there, he would pass through the cancer unit. And he was talking about during the height of the AIDS epidemic, he would pass through the AIDS ward where these people were dying senselessly. And he reflected on the reality that if he were able to walk into either of those units and say, I have a solution for your hopeless, progressive, fatal illness, all you've got to do is follow the instructions in this silly little blue book and do what it says to the best of your ability, you will not die the way that you're dying, that they would not hem and haw. They would get that inventory done. But he would go to the alcoholic ward, see the same old alcoholic and say, want to come to the meeting? No, I'm good. You know, they're on a first name basis. No, I'm good. You know, he's been in and out, right? And there's something about this illness where, man, if everything in me fights the solution. But when I come to the end of myself, when I come to the end of my options, man, I got nothing left but to grab a hold of what's on offer. And it says this, which is to say, accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. And it does not have to be perfect. I just have to be willing to take the actions I don't want to take. I don't have to be jazzercised, which is the technical term. I don't need to have the jazz hands. Let me make that amends to my ex. Woo! You know, I don't have to be showing up like that. Sponsorship. Woo! I always love when they're like, don't do anything distracting. And I'm like, me, the whole meeting. Woo! I'm a hand talker. It's bad, y'all. But that idea that truly, I don't have to be excited to do it. I just have to be willing to do it. I don't have to be not afraid. I can do it anyways. I don't have to think it's going to work. I can do it with garbage motives. But if I give it my best effort, it'll work regardless of what I think or how I feel or what I believe. But if I have this illness and I don't do it, I will continue to wither away, regardless of what I think or feel or believe. Now we got a bit of we're going to get into some AA history. We got a bit of a coterie of the history husbands, plural this week, here for it. So keep in mind, I will be taking the history, you know, as I do, with a little loose and a little goose. All loose, all goose, loosey-goosey. And it'll be fine. Any inaccuracies, Rob or Gary, can correct me in the chat. I don't stand much, but I do stand to be corrected. All right. It's a wheelchair joke. Okay. So a certain American businessman, and this is our guy. He doesn't have to be your guy. I think he's a pretty all right guy. His name is Rowland Hazard. Hazard a guess as to what his name is, Rowland Hazard. And Rob's going to get that spelling because it doesn't spell the way you'd expect. It's ROWLAND and then Hazard, HAZARD. So Rowland Hazard. So this is who we're talking about. And you'll notice that the big book goes through this pattern of information and stories and information and stories. because that's how we learn. And so we're gonna follow the story of this guy, Rowland Hazard. So Rowland Hazard, a certain American businessman, our homie, Rowland. Rolly. Oh, that's going to take off in my brain and nowhere else. Rolly. Hazard a guess. Okay. A certain American businessman, Rowland Hazard, had ability, good sense, and high character. Now let's throw ourselves into Rowland's story. Am I somebody that would describe myself as having ability, which is to say a capable human being? So often, many of us come to Alcoholics Anonymous with, no, but I had a family, no, but I had a job, no, but I was able to do this, right? So we're dispelling the myth that alcoholics are these unproductive or unuseful people. So he had ability, he had good sense. I mean, who doesn't think they have common sense? Which is interesting because sometimes it feels like there's a shortage of that. But we all think we got it and that other people don't because I'm busy taking their inventory. But I like to take mine. That happens with practice. The more I take mine, the better it gets, right? And then high character. Who among us does not feel like we have values and morals? Never mind I couldn't live up to them, but I have them, right? So we're like, yeah, Rowland's just like us. And Rowland Hazard, I'll let you know, his full name was Rowland Hazard III. And if you have a number after your name, if you got a whole bunch of letters after your name, that means you're a smarty pants. But if you got numbers after your name, that means you come from money, which is the historically accurate. Nobody's corrected me yet. The historically accurate. So he came from money. And I believe it was a family in textiles. So they were making fabrics and cloths. And he came from money, which kind of dispels the myth that alcoholism is only for those that are poor, not those who are fortunate enough to live in the council estates. Ooh, it's an estate. That's been an ongoing thing. I'm like, I can't tell what's fancy here. Everything feels fancy. All right. Pinkies up. So it's this idea he came from money. And, I tell this story. This is not accurate, but this is how I like to tell this story. So the Great Depression hit and his family is feeling the effects of the Great Depression. And so they had to sell maybe one or two of their many yachts, hard times for the Hazards. And that's how I tell it. Is that true? Probably not. But you know what I mean? We're vibing. History vibes. All right. So he had money. He came from a good family. He was able to do business. He was a good person. But it says, for years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. So he was in and out of, sanitarium, let's put it in a modern connotation. For years, he had floundered from one rehab to another, from one detox to another. Does that start sounding familiar? In and out of treatment, in and out of treatment. And that is a sign that Rowland Hazard has the obsession of the mind. That he's going back to drinking despite all the things that he's trying to do to stay sober. Now, a little bit of transparency. Rowland Hazard, he really was kind of wanting to go the harm reduction route. He's like, no, I'd really like to find a way to continue to drink. And I know nobody here can relate to that. But that was sort of his sort of view. So it says he had consulted the best known American psychiatrists. So he saw the best of the best that was available to him in the United States. And that didn't work. So let's hold ourselves up to this light. Now, I don't got the money that Rowland's got to spend on these guys. But did I try therapists, counseling, psychologists, psychiatrists? Did I try a variety of outside mental health help? And did it not work? Again, a sign that he's got the obsession of the mind. It says then he had gone to Europe, Switzerland. We were just there. We got to see the outside of his house. Not the inside, because guess what? It's not accessible. Found that out there. Also, they don't have parking. Anywho, focus. There's also this myth that was told, and I told because I thought it was true. So keep in mind, whenever I say something, if it's inaccurate, I'm wrong. But for years, I would tell this story. And it's the story, and so I'm prefacing it. It is not a true story. but I'm telling it anyways, and I'm going to talk about why it's important. So the story is that Rowland Hazard, he's seen the best of the best in the United States, and nobody's being of much use. Nobody's super helpful in this deal. He's like, you know what I got to do? I got to see the best in the world. And you know who's the best in the world? Freud. And I am going to see Sigmund Freud because he could afford it. Now, the myth, because this story is not true, the myth is that Sigmund Freud was not seeing new patients. And so he had to slum it and see the second most famous psychiatrist in the whole world. Oh, that poor thing. Slumming it with Dr. Carl Jung. Oh, poor thing. And so, is that true? No. He always wanted to see Carl Jung, and he had the money to get it. So that worked out. But why, when we talk about the myths in AA, why do they persist? And for me, I have a look at them because there's meaning behind them. They persist because of the meaning. And the meaning of this myth is that Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were contemporaries of each other. And they believed a lot of the same things for a little while. And then there was a bit of a falling out, some hot drama, the psychiatry drama, hot gossip, spill the tea, as they do. And they knew each other and were friends. And then have this falling out. Now, for our purposes, in this myth, the main area that these two great men of modern psychiatry differed was that Freud believed all matters of the mind could be solved in and of the mind, where Carl Jung believed that there were certain matters that required a spiritual experience. And the reason we emphasize the story that is not true is to emphasize a couple things. One is that, man, I can't do it without a higher power's help. I can't do it. But the second is how often in our very lives a spiritual experience begins with me not getting what I want. Right? Like, honestly, at no point do you get like your order at Nando's and have a spiritual awakening. It's usually, which is the spiritual thing, it's usually the beginning of me not getting what I think I need to be given that which I truly need. Now, speaking of these guys, I'll talk about it a little bit more probably next week. There was a conference, I believe it was in 1909, but it might be 1913. The Clark conference. 09. I got it! First try every time, and then I said more numbers and made myself wrong. There's this Clark. Thank you. I love having applause in the background. That's delightful. But this Clark conference in 1909, and I'm going to tell you a story that's not fully true. I'm going to page it up. And again, Gary and Rob can correct me when I'm wrong, but or whoever wants to, but so they're at this conference, and this is how I like to tell the story. It's a psychiatry conference, and so they're at this Clark conference, and I imagine it, like, oh, Sigmund Freud, he's the hot guy in charge, and everybody's just piling in to see Sigmund Freud, and then like Carl Jung and this gentleman by the name of William James are hanging out in the hallway, and Rob's got the picture. I can just tell that's what's in the chat. Love it. And so they're hanging out like this Freud guy, and they start talking. Now, what actually happened is I think they had maybe one, maybe two dinners where the two of them were talking, but it's more fun to tell it my way, which is how history is. Yikes. But they were having this talk. And Carl Jung, who already had an interest and a belief, he was talking with this gentleman, this American psychiatrist by the name of William James. And William James' chief place of study was in what he called religious experiences. Was talking about spiritual awakenings. And he wrote a book that we're going to talk about in a page and a half or so, were varieties of religious experience, which is incredibly influential to our book. And so that's all of that to say, he went and saw Carl Jung. He flew over to Switzerland, worked with the guy. That's all. I'm so good at keeping us on track, isn't it? So good. How are we doing for time? Oh, I gotta be wrapping up soon. Whoopsies. When I'm on a tablet and I have to go to my phone to see what time it is, it's a whole thing. Anyway, we'll be wrapping up shortly. Yikes. Sorry, Papa. No pressure. You do great. All right. So we had then gone to Europe, Switzerland, probably Zurich, because that's where his house was. I don't know if that's true, but I'm just guessing. Placing himself in the care of the celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. So Dr. Carl Jung was his attending physician, his doctor. And it's as though experience had made him skeptical. So though he had relapsed every single other time he had gone, he had this. He finished his treatment with unusual confidence. Now, you don't have to do a show of hands, but is there anyone here who has finished treatment with unusual confidence? Anyone here ever had this time is different? I really feel it. This time's different, right? So he had one of those. It says his physical and mental condition were unusually good. He's physically doing well. He's mentally doing well. He's kicking it. He's having a great time. That's what they said historically in the early 1900s. Kicking it. He did not. Yeah, the vibes. And it says above all, so more important than how he was feeling physically and more important than how he was feeling mentally, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. So what did he have? He had self-knowledge. He knows so much about himself. He's worked through all the things in his mind. He's dealt with his triggers. He's worked on his trauma. He's done his inner child work. I mean, they didn't have those things. I'm trying to use modern examples. He's done it all. And he's gone out and he's like, man, I got this thing. I know myself. I have knowledge. I have awareness. The relapse was unthinkable. And this will be a surprise to nobody in the room. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. What? He was drinking again? What? Right? And what kicked in for him was the obsession of the mind. So one of the most famous psychiatrists in the world, intensive treatment, not enough to keep him sober. Physically feeling well, mentally feeling well, living his best life, not enough to keep him sober. And it says, more baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he had no idea why it happened. Can I relate to that? Can I relate to having this desire within me? I don't want to drink. I need to stay sober. I want to stay sober. And then I drink and I'm like, why did that even happen? I'm baffled. And so he says, you know what? So what we'll do is we're going to see that he's going to go back to the doctor. And I'm going to wrap it up with this. So what happens? I'm going to summarize it real quick. We'll go into more detail and read through next week. But what happens is he goes back to Dr. Carl Jung and he says, dude, what the heck? That's verbatim. Dude, what the heck? And Dr. Carl Jung says, my bad, homie. My bad, home slice. I gave you the wrong diagnosis. You are hopeless. The best that you can do is lock yourself away. Get a bodyguard because, man, you got money. You can afford it. People like you don't get well. And I'll read that and I'll think, bad news, Rowland. But that same diagnosis was given to us on page 24. The same prognosis was given to us on page 25. And is given to Rowland. And so when I can come to that place of hopelessness, then I'm able to awaken to those two options and accept the option of hope. So we'll leave it there and give Peppa some time to wrap it up. So thank you so much.